issue. Don't fall down. Our first reading today is from the book of Kristal, chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. If you've seen my profile recently updated in a way that is confusing to you, this change was intentional. My account has not been hacked. This is not an elaborate April Fool's Day joke. Since there's no way of easing into this, I'll be straightforward and blunt. I am transgender. I understand that this may appear to be a drastic and sudden change, but I assure you that this is not a decision that was arrived at in some sudden fashion. This is an issue that I have struggled with for decades, going back to a very young age, just like Chaz. It is only recently that I've been able to fully come to terms with this and to overcome the fear that held me back from embracing this truth of who I am. On March 31st, 2020, with those words and accompanying photos posted on social media, I came out of the closet and announced to the world, see me for who I truly am. I'd come to terms with myself, but like so many other queer people coming out, my explanation was not about me. It was about defending my choice, as if defending my own personal master's dissertation before everyone who knew me. It was an attempt to assure people that I was okay, like my mental health and well-being was something that I had to convince others of in order to prove my own sanity to them. But more importantly, perhaps, it was absolutely about me begging and pleading for others to accept me as I had learned to accept myself. This is who I am. I'm not crazy. Please don't leave me just because my experience is different. It was me asking for validation and acceptance from the world and praying that I would receive it. Now, coming out much later in life, I was fortunate. I had confidence, I had self-reliance, I had financial stability, I had access to healthcare, and most fortunately, I was accepted by many around me. Sadly, so many others who identify as I do are not as blessed. See, last year, more than 400,000 transgender people were forced to relocate in the United States. Last month, more than 1,700 trans and transgender people lost their right to drive and their right to vote. Why? Why? Because more than 700 bills were introduced in states across the nation, 70 passed and signed into law that took away our civil rights and sense of basic human dignity. They fled because of public and government-sponsored discriminations, legitimate fears of incarceration, financial instability, and an end to health care. And in every case, do you know what that leading motivation is behind all of this cruelty? It's a misguided message wherein blind faith in the words of man takes the place of honest and open spirituality. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for inviting me into this sacred space today. As we celebrate transgender visibility a bit early this month, let me begin by looking out at all of you present and say, you are seen, you are valid, and you are loved. So mote it be. For me, Transgender Day of Visibility has always been about being out in public, showing that we exist, that we are seen, that we are valid, and hopefully that we are indeed loved. But as we sit together on this, my 6th Transgender Day of Visibility, that's so cool, right? I have to wonder to myself, this is what it's supposed to be about, right? You know, being a visible transgender figure, doing all this work in the community, helping to somehow normalize the trans experience so that we all gain acceptance, helping myself and my sisters, brothers, and others have a safe place in this world by sticking myself out there day after day after day as some sort of transgender role model or queer matriarch so we can all feel like we belong. Well, after 6 years, I can say with confidence, it absolutely is. Even still, I'm just one small ripple in a pond helping to restore what was a rich and storied history of transgender spiritual leaders. Like my predecessors, it is my honor to both preserve that history and to light a beacon that others can continue to follow into the future. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, "Oh, Honorable Reverend Mother Kristal." Okay, now my kids gave me that title because I've been elected, so I'll always be honorable. I am ordained in a chaplain, so they call me Reverend, and I am their mom. So, "Oh, Honorable Reverend Mother Kristal, there is no way that the history of trans people and faith can go back that far. This transgender craze, it's so new." Well, my friends, I can say with absolute confidence that while we are slightly newer than, say, the ancient drawings found at the Lascaux caves, that newly minted transgender car smell that wore off somewhere between the 5th and 3rd millennium BC. Yeah. In some of the earliest records of spirituality and gender nonconformance, Inanna, the ancient Sumerian goddess of war, love, and fertility, was served by a cult known as the Gala, the priests of Sumerian faith known for their tradition of singing heart-soothing laments in order to soothe her warlike and rageful nature. Now, as a theocracy-based government at the time, they served not only as spiritual leaders in temples, but as bureaucrats in palaces throughout the Mesopotamian city-states, as highly respected community leaders. Now, lamentation back then was, like today, seen as a highly gendered behavior, it being the sole province of women then, and it had a language and cadence all of its own. So, if you'll indulge me in my Catholic roots for just a moment. "Patriarchy, O construct of oppression, you take from us our voice. You take from us our freedom. You take from us our autonomy. Inanna, free us from this social prison. Inanna, end our suffering. Inanna, bring us salvation." Okay, that was funny. Everyone who was called, thank you. I'll be wearing that shame later today. Everyone who was called to serve as a Gala, regardless of their sex assigned at birth, adopted feminine forms, including names, clothing, and speech and lamentation patterns for their priestly duties. Now, for some, it was just a job, and they lived otherwise cisgendered lives, like our drag queens in our community. But for many, they fully embraced this gender nonconformance, frequently living their lives authentically and being accepted as women all the time. Now, it wasn't just transgender women, but transgender men and other forms of gender nonconformance was widely accepted throughout that region for thousands of years, whether it was the numerous dynasties of Mesopotamia, such as the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Amorites, and even the Jewish people, to populations across Indochina, Polynesia, and, as it turns out, even North and South America, often holding special, elevated roles and even being revered as divine beings by some. Speaking of revered transgender beings, I too welcome tributes of praise and blind followers if you're so inclined. Okay. That never sells, I get it. But somewhere around 600 BC, this started to shift. Influences from growing civilizations and empires, including Greece, Rome, Persia, Egypt, and Carthage, well, they looked at gender nonconformity in a different light. See, this shift from early animism to multi-gendered polytheistic gods during the early days of civilization, which led to that reverence of transgender folks, will once again change direction, and this time towards pantheons that looked more human-like. After all, as philosophy developed, so did people's understanding of faith and those that they worshipped. People had begun to learn they couldn't possibly have been created by a god that looks like a bull or an eagle. That's preposterous. Of course it had to be a man or woman that could simply transform themselves into a bull or an eagle, or even another gender. After all, we were created by the gods in their image, and none of us has 8 arms, bull horns, or wings, although I wouldn't mind. And so as these new ideas and cultures developed, there was no place left for gender nonconforming people, not even the once revered eunuchs. And as patriarchal struggles of dominance began to evolve, power became synonymous with manhood, both gender-based and in more colloquial terms. gender nonconformance was now the province of the gods of trickery, such as Loki, and seen as deviant behavior rather than revered. And as Christianity and Islam rapidly spread, so too did this new social construct of gender normativity, which created a new hierarchy of man over woman, and no place for anyone that did not fall into that binary. This social construct spread across the Eastern religions as well, with Hinduism, Buddhism, and Shintoism also evolving to reject third-gendered or transgendered people. Now, I'm going to pause here for a moment before we get to the modern era so we can reflect on this momentarily and so I can have a sip of this. After the few ancient deities like Inanna, Dionysus, or Hermaphroditus, the world went almost 2,000 years, or most of recorded history, disavowing the gender nonconforming existence. It's hard to be visible when you're so actively being erased. And so what stories and records we do have are often passed down orally, and too often they've become lost to us. As a result of this erasure, while there are numerous mentions of transgender figures throughout history, we've had Roman emperors and other figures who've come through time, there are almost none of spiritual leaders. And most often the stories we do have end in great tragedy. Transgender spiritual leaders largely vanished from the record for a very long time. In fact, it wasn't until 1776 when Jemima Wilkinson emerged from a life-threatening illness, stating that they had been reborn as a genderless or non-binary being, a Quaker evangelist, and adopted the name Public Universal Friend. The Friend, as they were referred to, despised pronouns and gender roles, and they did this all while traveling around the northeastern United States preaching about free will and opposing slavery. How Unitarian of them. The Friend amassed a small group of dedicated followers, and together they founded a small religious compound in Massachusetts that existed until the 1860s. Now, the Friend is acknowledged as being not only the first queer person in history in the United States, but the first American to found a religious community in the entire New World. This, unfortunately, was but a small blip on the radar, and there are no records of transgender spiritualists again for the next 100 or so years. Fast forward, 1979, I'm all of 4 years old at the time, when some crazy group known as the Unitarian Universalists became the first recognized religious institution to decide that trans people could be called to serve as clergy. Y'all applaud yourselves for that. Not apologize, applaud. Right? And in 1988, the first openly transgender person was ordained by the Unitarians. Now, despite this progression, it still wasn't until 2002 that Reverend Sean Dennison became the first openly trans person called to ministry in Utah. And he still serves today at the Rogue Valley Universalist Unitarian Fellowship in Oregon. 3 years later, the Church of England followed suit and ordained their first transgender priest. And today, there are hundreds of gender nonconforming ministers of various faiths, including the Bishop Megan Rohrer, the first transgender bishop in the ELCA, Reverend Dr. Cameron Partridge, an Episcopalian who was the first ever to preach at the Washington National Cathedral, and Esther Barathi, an evangelical pastor doing the work throughout India. From those who are so revered to those of us who are just simple chaplains, we all come from different faiths, we all come from different experiences. But what we do have in common is this. All of us are preaching a similar theme. Trans people were created for a reason, as part of a plan, or lack of a plan. Our divine governing being or counsel doesn't make mistakes. The universe is unflawed. Everything is intentional. Simply looking at one text, the Christian Bible, clearly spells out this message, and so do all the rest of the books. They also show how every challenge presented to the faithful followers is an opportunity not for punishment, but for learning and for growth. They all talk of how spirituality is a mechanism for growth and enlightenment, to see beyond the binary choices before us at every turn and to explore those possibilities beyond. It's a message that is simple: love all and love unconditionally. This afternoon, I will invite you all to join me for an opportunity to learn more about my world and to grow in that mutual understanding. But for those of you who cannot, I want to offer these 3 short lessons to guide your own journey as seen through my queer lens of spirituality. First, inclusion should be organic. Please don't make a big deal out of everything when a queer person is present. Now, don't get me wrong. I enjoy seeing a subtle pin or recognition that a person or establishment supports the queer community. But don't point at it and say to me, "Hey, Kristal, you are super welcome here. Really, did I mention how welcome you are?" Well, it's true. It's true. We love trans people here. Can I comp you your meal? So now, all of this happens at the top of their lungs while nobody else is saying a word. Right? Now, that behavior is both a little bit creepy and overbearing. And what it does is it actually calls me out rather than makes me feel welcome. So all I ask, treat trans women like women, treat trans men like men, treat everyone with the same sense of respect that you want to be treated with, and strive to provide us a sense of actual inclusivity rather than special exclusivity. But yeah, I'll take the free meal, thanks. Second, please stop making a big deal out of other people's honest mistakes. Standing up for us is sorely needed and welcomed in this time. But like fine wine, perhaps sometimes in moderation. Now, while you may have the sudden urge to stand up for us in public places, to defend the misuse of pronouns when we're right there with you, instead maybe ask first. "Hey, Kristal, can I help?" Or, "Are you okay?" is a good start. Maybe I don't want the attention that your well-intentioned, righteous anger is bound to bring to the occasion. "It's she, her! Get it right!" That, honestly, can be worse than the mistake itself. Finally, consider that the person who's not being inclusive might not realize they didn't even make a mistake in the first place. There's a lot of learned pattern behavior that, honestly, if we had an hour or two, I could explain in great detail how our brains work along those lines. But people do need to work very intentionally to unlearn their default responses. So they may make a simple mistake while on autopilot, and a simple soft correction like, "It's she," is enough to point them in the right direction. Usually it is, and everyone can be more appreciative of a subtle approach. I firmly believe we need to give forgiveness and understanding to others in order to expect it in return. Those who return that forgiveness are certainly worthy of our time. Those who do not, well, I feel sadness for them. They have bigger problems to deal with than how they feel about me. They deserve my love and compassion rather than my anger. That's my message to you all today. Lead with love. Whether it's with queer people, people of color, disabled people, heck, even middle-class white people. We are all a struggling people. And when we are struggling, we don't need anger and righteous fury. We need support born out of love and understanding. So I hope you will join me in practicing some self-love. Find your joy and repeat these 3 simple phrases after me. I am seen. I am valid. I am loved. I invite you now to join me in a meditation centered in that love. Let yourself sit quietly and at ease. Allow your body to be relaxed and open, your breath natural, your heart easy. Begin the practice of gratitude by feeling how year after year you have cared for your own life. Now, let yourself begin to acknowledge all that has supported you in this care. With gratitude, I remember the people, animals, plants, insects, creatures of the sky and sea, air and water, fire and earth, all whose joyful exertion blesses my life every day. With gratitude, I remember the care and labor of 1,000 generations of elders and ancestors who came before me. I offer my gratitude for the blessing of this earth I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the measure of health I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the family and friends I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the community I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the teachings and lessons I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the life I have been given. Just as we are grateful for our own blessings, so we can be grateful for the blessings of others. Now shift your practice to the cultivation of joy. Continue to breathe gently. Bring to mind someone you care about, someone it is easy to rejoice for. Picture them. Feel the natural joy you have for their well-being, their happiness, their success. With each breath, offer them your grateful, heartfelt wishes. May you be joyful. May your happiness increase. May you not be separated from great happiness. Sense the sympathetic joy and caring in each phrase. And when you feel some degree of natural gratitude for the happiness of this loved one, extend this practice to another person you care about. May you be joyful. May your happiness increase. May you not be separated from great happiness. And practice dwelling in joy until the deliberate effort of practice drops away and the intentions of joy blend into the natural joy of your own wise and beautiful heart. May you be joyful. May your happiness increase. May you not be separated from great happiness. Namaste.